I want to talk with you today about a truth that explains more about your future than any prediction, any horoscope, any supposed secret. It's a principle so clear, so brutally honest, that once you see it, you can never unsee it. I call it the 95-5 rule, and it simply states that 95% of people will drift through life without clear goals, without deep purpose, without any real claim on their own destiny, while 5% choose to think, to plan, to decide what they want, and go after it with relentless focus. This ratio explains the distribution of wealth, of fulfillment, of respect, of peace of mind. It explains why some seem to live lives of calm abundance while others struggle in quiet desperation. I want you to understand this ratio not as a condemnation but as a warning and an invitation, because the truth is that you get to choose which side you will be on. You are not born into one group or the other. You decide through your habits, your choices, and your willingness to think when others refuse. Before we go any further, let me pause here and ask you to consider something. If this idea already resonates with you, if you know you want to be in that 5% who live deliberately, who choose their path, I encourage you to subscribe to stay connected. This isn't about numbers or popularity. This is about building a community of people who want to think for themselves, to live with purpose, and to help each other do the same. Let's look at the 95% for a moment. These are good people, decent people who nonetheless have given up the responsibility of thinking for themselves. They conform, they follow, they do what is expected, what is safe, what is familiar. When they are young, they have dreams. They say they want to be successful, happy, free. But over time, they stop questioning, stop planning, and start settling. They let circumstances dictate their lives. They blame their boss, the economy, their upbringing, their luck. But they do not realize that they have made the most dangerous decision of all, the decision to let other people do their thinking for them. This conformity is the silent killer of dreams. It does not happen all at once. It is slow, insidious, comfortable. It tells you that it's fine to just get by. It whispers that you shouldn't stand out, that it's better to fit in, to avoid risk, to keep your head down. And the tragedy is that most people listen. They stop asking themselves what they want out of life. They stop setting goals. They give up on the idea that they can create their own future. And so they drift. They do what everyone else does, hoping it will lead to happiness, but finding only frustration. Now consider the 5%. These are the people who refuse to live by accident. They understand that thinking is the hardest work there is, which is why so few people do it. They take the time to decide what they want from life. Not just in vague terms, but specifically. They write it down. They make plans. They adjust those plans as they learn and grow. They take responsibility for the outcome, knowing that while they cannot control every event, they can always control their response. These are the people who say, I will not live my life on someone else's terms. I will choose my own path, and I will pay the price to walk it. This decision to think, to truly think, is the dividing line between the 95 and the 5. It's not education. Many highly educated people live in the 95%, never questioning the path laid out for them. It's not talent. Many talented people squander their gifts because they refuse to think about how to use them. It's not luck. Luck favors the prepared mind. The difference is this: the 5% have decided to take full ownership of their lives. They do not wait for someone to tell them what to do. They do not drift with the currents of other people's opinions. They set a course and steer toward it, no matter how long it takes. I want you to imagine a ship leaving the harbor. If it has a captain, a plan, and a destination, it will almost certainly arrive. It may face storms, detours, or delays, but it knows where it's going and keeps adjusting its course until it arrives. But if it has no plan, no captain, no destination, it will drift aimlessly. It may end up wrecked on the rocks or lost at sea. This is not fate. It is the natural result of planning or failing to plan. Your life is that ship. The question is, who is the captain? Have you decided where you're going, or are you hoping the currents of life will take you somewhere good by chance? One of the saddest sights is to see someone with incredible potential waste it because they will not think. They will not take an hour to sit quietly with a notebook and ask themselves, what do I want? What am I willing to give to get it? How can I serve others in a way that makes me indispensable? They rush from task to task, day to day, living reactively instead of deliberately. And then they wonder why they are unfulfilled, why they feel restless or envious of those who seem to have purpose. The answer is not a mystery. It is a refusal to think. But there is hope in this message. Tremendous hope. Because the moment you decide to think, to really think about your life and what you want, you cross the line into the 5%. It doesn't matter what you've done up to now. It doesn't matter what your background is, what mistakes you've made, or what limitations you believe you have. None of that is permanent. You can choose today to take responsibility for your future, to set goals, to make plans, to review those plans and adjust them as needed, to stop drifting and start steering. This choice is available to anyone. It is not reserved for the rich, the educated, the lucky, or the well-connected. It is available to you, but you must choose it. No one can do it for you. And so I ask you as we begin this journey together to make that choice now. Decide that you will be a thinker, that you will not be satisfied with drifting, that you will be one of the rare few who lives deliberately, who shapes their own destiny, who becomes part of the 5% who truly live. Because in the end, that decision will determine your future. Most people, if you ask them, will tell you they want success. They will say they want security, happiness, freedom. But when you ask them to define those things to describe exactly what they mean, they fall silent. They haven't taken the time to decide, and so they drift, year after year, hoping that life will somehow hand them these gifts without demanding the price. But life does not work that way. It demands clarity. It demands purpose. The 95% are not failures because they lack intelligence or ability. They fail because they never stop to choose their direction. They mistake activity for progress, movement for achievement. They stay busy, but they are busy going nowhere in particular. The tragedy is that many of these people are hardworking, honest, even talented. But effort without direction is wasted. It is like running full speed in circles. They work hard at jobs they don't like, for people they don't respect, to buy things they don't need. They never stop to ask, is this the life I want? Because they fear the answer, or they believe it is too late to change. But the truth is, it is never too late to think. It is never too late to decide. And the moment you do, you separate yourself from the crowd. You stop being a passenger in your own life and take the wheel. If you find yourself in this position, there is no shame in it. Most people were never taught to think about their future in clear terms. Schools teach us to memorize, to comply, to prepare for tests, but they rarely teach us to sit quietly with our own thoughts and ask, what do I truly want? What does success mean to me? And so most of us go along with the crowd. We choose careers because they're expected of us. We buy things because everyone else does. We seek approval from people whose lives we don't even admire. And then one day we wake up wondering why we feel restless, why our dreams seem so far away. But there is an antidote to this aimless drift. And it is simple, even if it is not easy. It is the practice of thinking deliberately, of taking time each day, even just a few minutes, to ask yourself serious questions. What do I want to achieve this year, this decade? What do I want my relationships to look like? My health, my finances, my spiritual life? Most people avoid these questions because they are uncomfortable. They force us to confront the gap between where we are and where we want to be. But until you define that gap, you cannot begin to close it. It is in this act of defining your goals that you cross into the 5%, because once you know what you want, you can begin to plan for it. You can start to ask the next critical question, how can I serve others in a way that moves me closer to my goal? Because make no mistake, your success will always be tied to the value you deliver. It will always be a reflection of how well you solve problems, ease pain, or fulfill desires for other people. The person who thinks about this every day, who refines their service, who finds better ways to deliver value, cannot be held back for long. They may face setbacks, they may fail repeatedly, but they will always rise because the world cannot ignore genuine value forever. This is the difference between wishing and deciding. Everyone wishes for success, but few decide on it. A wish is passive, it waits, it hopes. A decision is active, it plans, it acts, it corrects its course when necessary. The 95% wish for better lives, but keep doing the same things, thinking the same thoughts, avoiding the discomfort of change. The 5% decide what they want and then align their daily actions with that vision. They review their progress, they ask for feedback, they learn, they adjust, and over time they close the gap between their dreams and their reality. You might think this sounds demanding. It is. But it is no more demanding than the alternative, because drifting is hard too. It is hard to look back and realize you've wasted years. It is hard to live with the quiet ache of knowing you settled. It is hard to feel envy at those who chose differently and now live with freedom you can only imagine. Life is demanding, no matter which path you choose. The question is not, will it be hard? The question is, will it be worth it? And only you can answer that. I want you to see this clearly. The world is not holding you back. Circumstances are not holding you back. Your own lack of decision is what holds you back. Your willingness to conform, to avoid the hard work of thinking, to follow the crowd. The 5% are not geniuses, they are not chosen, they are not better than you, in any way except one. They decided. They decided that their lives would be theirs to shape. They decided they would think for themselves. They decided they would pay the price in focus, in discipline, in courage, and that decision made all the difference. So today I ask you to begin with a single commitment, to think. To think honestly about what you want, about where you are now, and about the steps you are willing to take to close that gap. Write it down. Review it often. Let it guide your choices. Because the moment you do that, you are no longer drifting. You are steering. You are taking responsibility for the only thing you truly control yourself. And in doing so, you step into the 5%. Not because you're lucky or special, but because you chose to. There is a reason so few people make this choice, and it is not because they are incapable or lazy. It is because thinking, real, honest, deliberate thinking is hard work. It is uncomfortable. It forces us to confront truths about ourselves that we might prefer to ignore. It reveals contradictions in our behavior. It exposes the excuses we have carefully built to protect our pride. And so most people avoid it. They fill their days with noise, with distraction, with busyness masquerading as productivity. They check their phones, they rush from one obligation to the next, they collapse into entertainment at the end of the day, and they tell themselves they're too tired to think. And in that way, they give away the one thing that could change everything, their power to choose. I want you to understand how rare it is to stop and think clearly about your own life. It is so rare that those who do it are often seen as strange, even threatening. Because once you start thinking, truly thinking, you stop accepting the easy answers. You question the assumptions that most people live by. You see that the path everyone else is walking may not lead anywhere you want to go, and that makes you different. It makes you stand out. Some will admire you for it, others will resent you. But you will have done something most never do. You will have taken responsibility for your own mind. Ask yourself honestly, when was the last time you sat alone in silence and asked, what do I want from this life? Not what do others expect from me? Not what do I think I can get away with? But what do I really, truly want? Most avoid this question because the answer is uncomfortable. It forces you to admit that you're not where you want to be. It forces you to see the gap between your desires and your actions. But this is the beginning of all change. Until you see that gap, you cannot close it. Until you name what you want, you cannot move toward it. This is the dividing line between the 95 and the 5. The 95% wait for life to happen to them. They react. They adapt to circumstances without ever trying to shape them. They say, I'll be happy when I get the promotion, when I have more money, when someone loves me. But even when those things arrive, they find new conditions to attach their happiness to. Because they have not learned the discipline of deciding, they have not taken control of the one thing they can always control, their own thoughts, their own plans, their own actions. Meanwhile, the 5% understand something simple but profound. No one will hand you a plan for your life. No one else can decide for you, and if you don't decide, someone else will. Your boss will decide how you spend your days. Advertisers will decide what you want. Society will decide what success means for you, and you will live out their plan instead of your own. That is the cost of refusing to think. That is the silent price paid by the 95%, a price most never even realize they're paying until it's too late. But the good news is this: you can choose differently at any time. You can choose today. You can become someone who thinks deliberately, who asks, what do I want? And then follows it with, what am I willing to do to get it? You can decide that you will no longer be satisfied with drifting, that you will not blame others for your choices, that you will own your future even if it means facing discomfort now, because that discomfort is nothing compared to the regret of a life unlived. Understand this clearly. The difference between a life of frustration and a life of fulfillment is not luck. It is not intelligence or education or background. It is the willingness to think, to ask hard questions, to make firm decisions, to set goals and pursue them relentlessly, to review and adjust those goals as you grow. The 5% are not immune to fear or doubt or failure. They experience all those things, but they have chosen to think anyway, to plan anyway, to act anyway. I want you to imagine what your life could look like if you did this. If you spent time every day, even just a few minutes, defining your goals, reviewing them, planning your day in light of them, making choices deliberately instead of reactively. How much clearer would your path be? How much more confident would you feel knowing you were moving towards something that mattered to you? How much more resilient would you be in the face of setbacks, knowing they were just steps along the path you chose? This is not theory. This is the reality of those who choose to think. They live with fewer regrets, they make fewer excuses, they waste less time. They attract opportunities because they know what they're looking for and are prepared to seize them. They become leaders not because they seek power over others, but because they have learned to lead themselves, and others recognize that quality and are drawn to it. They are respected, not because they demand respect, but because they have earned it through clarity, consistency, and courage. So today I challenge you to take the first step into the 5%, make the commitment to think, to sit quietly, free from distraction, and ask yourself, what do I want? Why do I want it? What am I willing to do to achieve it? Write down your answers, review them often, let them guide your choices, because in the end, this is the choice that determines everything else. It is the choice to live deliberately, to claim your own future, and to join the small but powerful group of those who can say with confidence, I know where I'm going, and I'm willing to pay the price to get there. You see, one of the most remarkable things about this 95-5 rule is how invisible it is in day-to-day life. If you walk down the street, you can't tell at a glance who belongs to which group. Everyone shops at the same stores. They wear similar clothes. They watch the same programs, follow the same news. On the surface, it can appear as if we are all living roughly equivalent lives. But beneath that surface lies an enormous difference. A difference in thought, in purpose, in direction. The 95% live as passengers. They are carried along by trends, by habits, by the expectations of others. The 5% live as captains of their own ship, charting their own course, adjusting their sails when the wind changes, but never surrendering control of the wheel. And this difference becomes visible over time. It shows in the confidence of those who have chosen their path. It shows in the opportunities they seize because they recognize them when they appear. It shows in the respect they earn, the trust they command, the calm they maintain, even when life grows turbulent. Because they know where they are going, they are not easily rattled. They understand setbacks as lessons. They see obstacles as puzzles to be solved. While others panic or complain, they ask, what can I do now? How can I adjust? This mindset is not given to them at birth. It is developed through the habit of thinking, of planning, of owning their choices. Consider the 95%. Many of them will tell you they don't like their jobs. They'll say they wish they had more money, more freedom, more respect. But ask them what they're doing to change that. And you'll hear excuses. I can't because of the economy, because of my boss, because of my family, because I don't have time, because I'm too old, because I'm too young. And behind every because is the unspoken truth. I have not decided to think seriously about changing my situation. It is easier to explain why I can't than to plan how I will. It is easier to blame than to act. And yet every person alive has access to the same basic tool, their mind. You do not need permission to think. You do not need resources to plan. You do not need approval to decide what you want from life. No one can stop you from imagining a better future, from writing down your goals, from breaking those goals into daily actions. This is the great equalizer of humanity. The world may be unfair in many ways, but it cannot take away your ability to choose your thoughts, your responses, your focus. That power is yours alone, if you will claim it. Now, this does not mean life will hand you everything you want on a silver platter. Far from it. The 5% are not exempt from hardship. They get sick. They lose loved ones. They face setbacks and betrayals and failures. But the difference is in how they respond. Because they have thought about their goals, they do not let obstacles become permanent defeats. They adapt. They learn. They persist. They do not surrender their vision just because the road is hard. In fact, they expect the road to be hard, and because they expect it, they are prepared for it. This is why thinking is so powerful. It is not just about dreaming, it is about preparing, about anticipating problems before they arise, about asking, what will I do if this happens? How will I respond if I fail? What resources can I build now to help me later? The 95% avoid these questions because they are uncomfortable. They would rather believe everything will just work out somehow. But hope is not a plan. Wishing is not preparation. The 5% understand that clarity today prevents panic tomorrow, that time spent thinking now saves time wasted reacting later. And thinking is not something you do once and forget. It is a daily practice. Just as you must eat each day to nourish your body, you must think each day to nourish your goals. The most successful people review their plans regularly. They measure their progress, they adjust their strategies, they reflect on what worked and what didn't. This is not a sign of indecision, but of commitment. They are so dedicated to their destination that they refuse to wander off course without realizing it. They are willing to correct themselves, to learn, to improve, because they know that the price of not thinking is stagnation. I want you to understand this deeply. Your mind is your greatest asset. It can solve problems, create opportunities, heal wounds, build bridges. But only if you use it. Only if you demand of it the answers you need. Too many treat their mind like a storage closet cluttered with outdated beliefs, fears, and other people's opinions. The 5% treat their mind like a laboratory, a workshop, a command center. They keep it organized. They keep it supplied with good ideas, with clear goals, with honest questions, and they spend time in it every day. So I ask you today, how are you treating your mind? Are you letting it grow weak through neglect? Are you feeding it junk and wondering why it can't produce anything of value? Or are you training it, challenging it, using it to build the life you want? Because that choice, more than any other, will determine your future. It will decide whether you drift with the 95% or steer with the 5%. It will decide whether you look back with regret or with quiet satisfaction, knowing you lived deliberately. When you choose to think deliberately, you will discover that life begins to respond to you in kind. Opportunities that once passed unnoticed will start to appear. You will recognize them not because the world has changed, but because you have. Your mind, sharpened by planning and purpose, will see possibilities where before you saw only barriers. You will become more discerning, able to tell the difference between distractions and genuine opportunities that align with your goals. This is one of the most remarkable effects of joining that 5% who think clearly. They seem lucky to others, but their so-called luck is simply the natural result of preparation meeting opportunity. Think of the salesman who studies his clients, who asks questions, who understands their needs better than they do themselves. He is not lucky when he closes the deal. He is prepared. Think of the entrepreneur who spots a gap in the market because she has trained herself to look for it. She is not fortunate by accident, she is paying attention. The artist who creates work that resonates with others is not blessed with inspiration alone. He has disciplined himself to observe, to practice, to refine. This is the fruit of thinking. It is not mystical, it is practical, and it is available to anyone willing to pay the price of thought. Now you must also know that thinking deliberately is not a one-time decision. It is a daily practice. The 5% do not set goals once and then forget them. They review them. They measure their progress. They make adjustments. They ask themselves hard questions. Is what I'm doing today moving me closer to where I want to be? Are the people I spend time with helping or hindering my goals? Is my daily routine aligned with my highest priorities? These are uncomfortable questions, but they are necessary, because drifting does not happen because we choose failure. It happens because we stop choosing anything at all. The world is full of people who meant well once, who had big dreams, who set goals when they were young. But life got busy. Responsibilities piled up. Disappointments came. And so they stopped thinking deliberately. They started reacting instead of acting. They let habits replace intention. And over time they found themselves living lives they never chose, trapped by routines they never questioned. If you want to avoid this fate, you must make thinking a discipline, as regular as eating or sleeping. Because just as your body needs food, your mind needs purpose. There is a saying that if you don't run your own life, someone else will. And it's true. The world is full of people with plans for you. Employers, advertisers, politicians, even well-meaning friends and family. If you don't decide what you want, they will decide for you. and you may find yourself climbing a ladder only to discover it's leaning against the wrong wall. This is why thinking is not selfish. It is essential. By deciding what you want, you free yourself to serve others better. You become clear about the value you offer. You become trustworthy because your actions are consistent with your principles. I want to remind you that the 95-5 rule is not about intelligence, wealth, or talent. It is about choice. It is about who is willing to think when others will not. Many people far less talented than you will succeed simply because they took the time to plan, to prepare, to reflect. And many people with every advantage will fail because they refuse to think. They relied on luck, on charm, on shortcuts. But luck runs out, charm fades, shortcuts lead nowhere. Thought, on the other hand, compounds. Every day you spend thinking deliberately adds to your understanding, sharpens your intuition, strengthens your resolve. There is also a humility required in this process, because thinking clearly means admitting you don't have all the answers yet. It means being willing to learn, to seek advice, to study those who have gone before you. The 5% are not know-it-alls. They are students of life. They know that every person they meet can teach them something, that every setback holds a lesson, that wisdom is earned, not assumed. This humility is another dividing line between those who grow and those who stagnate, because you cannot improve what you will not examine honestly. And this is where many people stop. They fear what they might find if they look too closely at their own habits, their own beliefs, their own excuses. It is easier to blame circumstances than to take responsibility. But there is no freedom in blame. There is only freedom in ownership. When you accept that your life is the result of your choices, you also claim the power to make new choices, to think new thoughts, to set new goals, to take new actions. That is true liberation. That is the promise of joining the 5%. So today I urge you to recommit to thinking deliberately. Don't let this be a moment of inspiration that fades by tomorrow. Turn it into a habit. Make time each day, even just a few quiet minutes, to ask yourself, am I drifting or steering? Am I reacting or planning? Am I living by choice or by default? Because the answer to those questions will shape not just what you achieve, but who you become. And in the end, that is the true measure of success. Not what you accumulate, but who you are. I want to speak plainly now about what happens when you choose to think deliberately, to live deliberately, to join that small minority who shape their own destiny. First, you will notice a change in how you see the world. Where others see problems, you will begin to see opportunities. Where others see obstacles, you will see challenges to be met and overcome. Where others see scarcity, you will see resources waiting to be developed. This is not magic or wishful thinking. It is simply the natural result of deciding to use the most powerful tool you possess, your mind. Once you begin to think clearly about what you want and how to get it, you will see possibilities that were invisible to you before. You will also notice that your confidence grows, not because you believe you are better than others, but because you know you are prepared. Most people are paralyzed by uncertainty. They fear what they do not understand. They avoid decisions because they might be wrong. But you will know that thinking ahead reduces uncertainty. It doesn't eliminate risk, but it manages it. It prepares you for the inevitable setbacks. It gives you a plan B, a plan C. And when you are prepared, you can act with calm, with purpose, with courage. That is what confidence truly is. Not arrogance or bravado, but quiet readiness. But I must warn you, this choice to think will set you apart. You will find yourself at odds with the crowd, because the majority are not used to someone who questions assumptions, who refuses to accept the easy answer, who asks why and why not. They may say you are difficult, stubborn, unrealistic. They may tell you to stop dreaming, to be practical, to do what everyone else is doing. Not because they want to harm you, but because your decision to think challenges their own choice not to. Your commitment to deliberate living is a mirror they may not want to look into. Understand this and do not let it deter you. Instead, see it as confirmation that you are on the right path. Throughout history, progress has always depended on the few willing to think differently. The explorers who sailed beyond the known map. The scientists who questioned accepted truths. The entrepreneurs who saw a need no one else had noticed. The leaders who challenged injustice. These people were not always celebrated in their time. Many were ridiculed, opposed, even punished. But they changed the world because they chose to think when others would not. This same principle applies in your daily life. You don't need to discover a new continent or invent a new technology to benefit from thinking. You simply need to bring that same spirit to your own goals. Ask yourself, how can I serve better? How can I improve my craft? How can I deliver more value? How can I become someone others rely on? These questions may seem simple, but few ask them seriously. Fewer still act on the answers. But those who do become the people we trust, the people we pay, the people we remember. There is power in this choice because it aligns you with the fundamental law of cause and effect. If you think carefully, plan wisely, act consistently, and review honestly, you will inevitably improve your results. This is not optional. It is law. Just as planting good seed in good soil with care and patience yields a harvest, so does disciplined thinking yield success. The world may not reward you instantly, it may test your patience, your resolve, but in the end it must yield to the person who refuses to give up, who refuses to drift, who keeps thinking, keeps planning, keeps moving forward. And you will find that thinking is not a burden but a joy, because nothing gives a person more satisfaction than knowing they are growing, that they are using their gifts, that they are building something that matters. Drifting may feel easier in the short term, but it leads to frustration, regret, envy. Living deliberately is demanding, but it leads to peace of mind, to the quiet pride of knowing you have done your best, to the gratitude of those you serve well, to the respect of those who recognize your integrity and consistency. Some will hear this and say, "But I don't have time to think, I'm too busy." I tell you, you don't have time not to think. How much time have you wasted fixing mistakes that thinking would have prevented? How much energy have you burned worrying about problems that could have been solved with a little planning? How many opportunities have you missed because you weren't clear about what you wanted? Thinking is not a luxury, it is the highest leverage activity you can do. 10 minutes of clear thinking can save you hours of wasted effort. So I urge you, if you want to join the 5%, if you want to create a future you can be proud of, start with this commitment. I will think, I will set aside time each day to plan, to reflect, to ask myself hard questions. I will write down what I want. I will review my progress. I will adjust when I see I'm off course. And I will not let the fear of discomfort stop me, because I know that the pain of discipline is far less than the pain of regret. Remember, no one else can do this for you. No one else knows your dreams, your values, your priorities. Only you can decide what you want your life to stand for. Only you can set your course, and only you can pay the price to get there. The choice is yours today and every day. Will you drift with the 95%, or will you choose to think and live deliberately with the 5%? That question will determine your future more than any other. When you choose to think deliberately and live as part of that 5%, you begin to notice another extraordinary truth. Life becomes simpler, not because problems vanish, but because your mind becomes clearer about what truly matters. The 95% fill their lives with clutter. Physical clutter, mental clutter, emotional clutter. They say yes to things they don't want to do. They buy things they don't need. They chase goals they never really chose. They live lives designed to impress people whose opinions shouldn't matter. But the 5% learn to strip away what is unnecessary. They ask, is this aligned with my goals? Does this help me serve better? Does this reflect who I choose to be? And if the answer is no, they let it go. This simplicity is not about poverty or austerity. It is about focus. It is about understanding that your time and energy are limited resources that must be invested wisely. It is realizing that every yes you give means a no to something else. The 5% choose carefully. They understand that doing fewer things with greater excellence is more powerful than doing many things poorly. They learn to say no, not out of selfishness, but out of commitment to their purpose. And because of this, they make better decisions, build stronger relationships, and achieve more meaningful success. Think about how this principle applies to your work. The 95% often pride themselves on being busy. They boast about their long hours, their overflowing schedules, their endless lists of tasks. But busyness is not productivity. Motion is not progress. The 5% know this. They don't measure their value by how exhausted they are at the end of the day. They measure it by the results they create. They ask, what is the highest value use of my time? What is the one thing I can do today that will make everything else easier or unnecessary? They focus on essentials. They prioritize. And because they do, they move forward faster, even if they seem to work less. This same principle applies to learning. The 95% consume information constantly but carelessly. They skim articles, scroll through social media, watch endless videos, but they rarely stop to think deeply about what they have learned. The 5% approach learning deliberately. They ask, how does this apply to my goals? How can I use this to serve better? How does this change my plan? They take notes, they reflect, they practice, and because they do, their knowledge becomes power usable, actionable, effective. They do not mistake knowing for doing. They turn insight into impact. Even in relationships, this mindset matters. The 95% often surround themselves with people who reinforce their comfort zones, who expect them to drift along. They fear standing out, so they choose company that keeps them small. The 5% are willing to choose their associations carefully. They seek out those who challenge them, who inspire them, who demand their best. They understand that you become like the people you spend the most time with. So they choose to spend time with thinkers, with doers, with people who have chosen to live deliberately. And in doing so, they lift themselves higher. This deliberate thinking also changes how you respond to challenges. The 95% see problems as reasons to stop. They say, I can't because, and list the obstacles. The 5% see problems as the work itself. They ask, how can I solve this? What resources do I have? Who can help me? They understand that obstacles are not signs they should quit, but invitations to grow. They do not expect life to be easy. They expect it to be demanding, and they prepare for that. So when difficulties come, as they will for everyone, they are ready. They do not panic. They do not complain. They adapt and continue. And make no mistake, this mindset is not about being cold or ruthless. It is about being responsible. It is about understanding that if you want to create a good life, no one else will do it for you. It is about respecting yourself enough to plan your days carefully, to choose your companions wisely, to invest your energy purposefully. The 5% do not see themselves as victims of life, but as stewards of it. They know they cannot control everything, but they can always control their choices. And so they focus on those choices with relentless clarity. This is the gift of thinking deliberately. It gives you agency. It gives you options. It gives you freedom. Not the shallow freedom of doing whatever you feel like in the moment, but the deep freedom of knowing you are living on your own terms, that you are not drifting through someone else's plan for you, that your days are spent in pursuit of goals you chose, that your work serves others in a way you are proud of, that your relationships are built on respect and mutual growth, that your life, when you look back on it, is one you chose and shaped with your own mind and hands. So today I ask you to consider, where can you simplify? Where can you focus more deeply? Where can you say no to what is trivial so you can say yes to what is essential? Because these are the questions the 5% ask themselves daily. And by asking and answering them honestly, they create lives of purpose, of effectiveness, of lasting value. If you have followed this far, you understand now that the 95-5 rule is not about fate, not about luck, but about a daily choice. It is the choice to think when others will not, to decide when others drift, to plan when others hope, to act with purpose when others react in fear or habit. This choice, repeated day after day, shapes a person into someone others respect, rely on, and remember. It is the difference between living by default and living by design, between ending up wherever the current takes you and arriving at the place you chose, knowing you paid the price to get there. This choice also demands something of you that many resist: personal responsibility. The 95% prefer to blame. They blame the economy, their upbringing, their boss, their partner, their competitors, the government, even bad luck. Blame is comforting because it absolves you of effort, but it is also a prison, because the moment you blame, you give away your power to change. The 5% understand this deeply. They do not waste time blaming. They ask, given where I am, what can I do next? How can I adapt? How can I grow? How can I serve better? This mindset turns problems into puzzles and setbacks into lessons. It turns life's inevitable difficulties into fuel for growth. And that is perhaps the greatest difference of all between these two groups. The 95% see difficulty as a signal to stop. They say this is too hard, and they withdraw. The 5% see difficulty as proof they are on the right path. They know anything worth having will be hard. They know comfort is the enemy of growth. So they embrace the struggle, not masochistically, but purposefully. They see in it a refining fire that burns away weakness, clarifies purpose, and strengthens resolve. Because they think deliberately, they do not fear difficulty. They expect it, and they prepare for it. This also changes how they see other people. The 95% often see life as competition for limited resources. They envy those who succeed, suspecting unfair advantage or luck. But the 5% see life as cooperation in a world of abundance. They know the greatest rewards come from serving others well. They do not fear competition because they know they can always serve better, adapt faster, think more creatively. They build partnerships, they share ideas. They lift others up because they know there is no lasting success built on tearing others down. Their thinking is expansive, not narrow, generous, not grasping. And because they think this way, they attract trust. People want to work with them, buy from them, follow them. They develop reputations that open doors money cannot buy. They find that life becomes a network of relationships built on mutual respect and value. This is not manipulation. It is the natural result of consistently thinking about how to deliver real value, how to solve real problems, how to help real people. And in the end, that is all business is, all leadership is, all life is, helping others get what they want and need in a way that is sustainable and honorable. Now I want to talk to you directly, person to person. You get to choose today which group you will belong to. You can choose to keep drifting, to keep hoping things will get better on their own, to keep reacting to circumstances and blaming what is outside you. Or you can choose to think, to sit quietly, perhaps for the first time in a long time, and ask, what do I really want from this life? What am I willing to do to get it? Who do I want to become? How can I serve others in a way that honors my values and uses my strengths? These questions are not easy, but they are yours to ask. No one can stop you, and no one can answer them for you. That is the burden of freedom, but also its greatest gift. Because once you answer them, once you set your course and begin steering, no one can take that away from you. Circumstances may change. Storms will come. You may have to alter your path many times, but you will be the captain. You will have decided. You will be among the rare few who can look back at their life without regret, knowing they lived it on purpose, that they used their mind, their heart, and their will to shape something meaningful. So I invite you today to cross that line, to leave the 95% behind, to claim the quiet, often lonely, but deeply rewarding life of the thinker, the planner, the doer, the one who says, I will not waste this brief, precious life living by accident, because in the end, that is the 95-5 rule in its simplest form. Most will drift, few will decide, and your future depends entirely on which choice you make. If this message has resonated with you, I encourage you to share it with someone who needs to hear it. Discuss it with friends, with family, with anyone you want to see grow and thrive. And if you found value here, consider subscribing so you never miss another opportunity to think more deeply about how to live deliberately. Together we can build a world where more people choose to be part of that 5% who think, who plan, who serve, and who truly live.